Kid Missing TV. Today we're going to talk about the cases of Laureen, Rahn, and Rachael Garden. They both vanished from New Hampshire within a short period of time of each other, and their cases are often connected. And I think it's a good possibility that their cases are in fact connected. So let's take a look, shall we? Rachael was 15 years old when she went missing on March 22nd, 1980. Laureen was 14 years old when she went missing on April 27th, 1980. They're almost exactly a month apart when they went missing. Rachael is missing from Newton, and Laureen is missing from Manchester. Let's start with Rachael. Rachael was last seen at Rose Corner Market on Route 108 in Newton, New Hampshire. She paid $5 for a pack of cigarettes, which back then they didn't care. They sold it to you. I can remember back then getting a note to, well, not at that age, but a little bit older, getting a note to go down to the store to buy it for a relative, you know. I don't smoke. Anyway, she was the oldest of 4 children. She went to the Sanborn Regional High School. She often walked down to Rose Corner Market. It was only a quarter of a mile, which is not really very far. Initially, police considered her a runaway when her parents reported her missing at 10 o'clock the following morning. With a population of barely 3,000 people, you'd think you'd find her fairly quickly if she was still in town. As a matter of fact, they only had one full-time policeman, so they probably had no clue what to do. They should have called in the state police, but she was described as headstrong and rebellious, fun-seeking and outspoken. Sounds like most teenagers, if you ask me. Police investigators have checked numerous leads, sightings, talked to people who knew her, did the best due diligence that they could do. Years later, at least 2 witnesses reported seeing Rachael talking to 3 young men in a dark car in the vicinity of Rose Market that day. Rachael was known to have associated with the young men before. Whoever they were, I don't know how they know that. In 2008, he was leaning against the counter and watched her across the street. She went down Maple Avenue, and that was the last he saw of her. The clerk, Peter. A truck driver who lived across the street from her actually claimed to have possibly seen her while he was in Florida. That was what came in 2008. I wish they would have been more clear about that. But, her father said as time went on, you don't think much of it because you've accepted certain things. But there's always that thing in the back of your mind that she is out there. That's right, Dad, that's why we won't give up. In 2013, there is almost no hope she is alive, Kingston Police Chief Donald Briggs said. But they hope to solve the crime. A $10,000 reward was offered at that time. And as far as I know, no other leads came about after the reward. which is unfortunate. Now, Laureen Rahn is a little bit more interesting, in that there's a little more to go on in her case. Laureen vanished from Manchester, which is a city. A city in New Hampshire is different than a city in other places, so it's probably 50,000 people if I had to guess today. Probably quite a bit less in 1980. Correct me if I'm wrong. Rahn was last seen at her mother's Merrimack Street apartment during the evening hours of April the 27th. There were no clues at the apartment where she was last seen, and there was nothing to be learned from the two friends who had seen her within an hour of when she disappeared. What's interesting is that in October, her mother's phone bill had charges from Santa Monica, California on October 1st. She immediately decided Laureen must have placed the calls. With the help of Santa Monica police, Rahn discovered that 2 calls were placed from a motel payphone to a motel in nearby Santa Ana. The 3rd call was to a hotline for teens who had questions about sex. Now, there's a whole kiddie porn thing happening at both of these hotels. We know this. We know the guy doing it was called Dr. Z. And how she wound up in the middle of all that, no one is sure. You know, how a little girl from New Hampshire wound up in the middle of it. The teen sex hotline, whatever you want to call it. That guy was also a doctor. He was questionable because he had said, yeah, my wife handled a girl, because my wife took in runaways and she handled a girl from New Hampshire and blah, blah, blah. They're questionable because didn't seem to be on the up and up. If you sort of go through the things that they said, it doesn't seem to be on the up and up to me. But they couldn't link the Dr. Z to the teen hotline. They couldn't prove that it was the same guy. I'm not so sure. They do suspect foul play in her case. The night that she actually disappeared, there was a male friend in the apartment. He got scared and left because there were voices in the hallway. I don't know. Possibly, maybe she wasn't supposed to have friends over and thought it was her mom. I don't know. I know her mother was out on a date with her boyfriend that evening. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, he thought her mother was returning. Okay. She probably wasn't supposed to have boys in the house. She did also have a female friend there that night. She remained. And the reason that the mother didn't know she was gone was because her girlfriend was actually gone until the next morning, which is when she finally called the police, was because she looked in her room when she came back from her date. Somebody was sleeping in her bed. She assumed it was her daughter. The next morning, when her friend got up and came out, and Rachel was nowhere to be found, she, wait a minute, you were sleeping in Rachel's bed? Where's Rachel? And that's when panic set in. And again, those calls, there's more detail on the phone calls that I want to give you to sort of help you understand the case a little bit better. Okay, October 1st, she had been Judith again found, as I said, that she had been charged with phone calls. Was placed from a motel in Santa Monica and another call from a motel in Santa Ana. I don't think those two places in California are that far from each other. The latter of which was made to a teen sexual assistance hotline, as we mentioned. Investigators spoke with the physician who ran the hotline. He is the one that stated that one of the girls that was living in his home as a runaway at one point may have been Laureen. Again, I find him a bit questionable. He also stated that Annie Sprinkle, a sex educator and former pornographic actress, who allegedly knew his wife, might have had information regarding Laureen. Again, weird. Law enforcement did not find any evidence linked to Sprinkle. Throughout 1981, there were numerous mysterious phone calls from an unknown individual, which he always received at 3:45 in the morning. Now, if they're from California, those 3:45 a.m. calls, California time would be at 12:45 in the morning. Still the middle of the night. But just to give you an idea, if you don't think about time zones, a lot of people don't. I don't want anybody to think I'm talking down to them. A lot of people don't think about the time difference. But there's a 3-hour time difference. It's 3 hours earlier. So that's something to consider when you consider that the phone calls may have been coming from there. The caller never spoke, which is interesting. They continued for several years, increasing in frequency around the Christmas holiday. I think she was trying to get help, trying to tell her mother where she was, but she couldn't talk because the bad guys, for lack of a better way of putting it, were nearby. So she couldn't. Her mother hired a private investigator to visit California in 1986. He located the motels. Local police in Santa Monica stated that one of the motels may have been used as a filming location by a child pornographer known as Dr. Z. So, however, law enforcement was unable to link Dr. Z to the hotline, as we mentioned. The same year, a childhood friend of Rahn's named Roger Morris received a phone call from a woman who claimed to be Lori or Laureen. Morris' mother answered the phone call and stated the woman claimed to have been her son's former girlfriend. That I find interesting. That is a possibility. There are sightings. There was a potential sighting at a bus terminal in Boston in 1981. Another unconfirmed sighting in 1988 from a prostitute in Anchorage, Alaska, or about a prostitute in Anchorage, Alaska, that fit Laureen's description. I would say, why on earth would you run away to Alaska? But if you're from New Hampshire, you're already used to the frigid cold and everything, so I guess it wouldn't be as weird. Possibly. Maybe it would be, let me know what you think. Sometime in the mid-80s, her mother remarried and relocated to Florida. She stated that she believes her daughter placed the phone calls from California in 1980. The unnamed male friend, who was drinking alcohol around the night she disappeared, committed suicide in 1985. The law enforcement never considered him a suspect in her disappearance. Investigators assigned to Rahn's case have stated they believe foul play is involved. Now, it is believed these cases may be connected, but there's so little to go on in Rachel's case. We don't have the phone calls, and we don't have the, so, but every person is different in terms of their, I don't know how to put it, their will, their strength, and their willingness to fight. Not physically fight, but fight mentally, you know, and I think that may explain part of why Rachel never got a hold of anyone. If they both did run away, it is possible they were picked up by the same trafficker. And traffickers take them all over the country. So they could have been anywhere. So sightings in Alaska and sightings there and sightings here, not unusual. Because they don't keep them in one place for very long because they're breaking the law. And they don't want them to be found. So these girls may be, you know, girls that are trafficked, may be technically prostitutes, but they're not. They're being sold. They're minors. And these two little girls have been in the hands of these predators, I firmly believe that, for way, way too long, if they are alive. And that's a big if. So, but we want to find them, whether it's find their remains or find them alive, if that's at all possible at this point, and bring them home to their parents. Their parents deserve that justice. Now, Thursday, we will be talking about the case of Danny Barter. He went missing on the Presidio Bay in Alabama. Danny was 4 years old. He went missing in 1959. He was a little cutie patootie, as you'll see next week. My friend Lynn actually gave me his case. And I can't wait to tell you more about him. And the family that is still 53 years later searching for him. The family that never got to celebrate his 5th birthday that August.
Oh, wow.
His mother, just to entice you a little bit, believes that someone took him because he was a beautiful, beautiful child and raised him. And it's a possibility because he was so young. But we'll get into the whole thing on Thursday. See you then. Have a terrific week. God bless you. Sorry. And good night. Mask out, then, May.